Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here. On my way home from work, in the library parking lot, I had to drop off some books in the library. I thought I'd quickly tell you about the 4 comics from this week that I have read so far. 3 of them are number ones. Isn't it kind of bizarre? You could just make videos every week about new number 1 comics. This is the world we live in. It just, every once in a while, it strikes me how strange that is. Let's see, steering wheel doesn't want to move. So I read Stellar, a new number 1 from Joe Keatinge and Brett Blevins. And I remember Brett Blevins, but I can't pin down my memory of what comics I read that were drawn by him, maybe late 80s. I feel like I saw him in some black and white comics and stuff, and then he was also maybe a Marvel artist in superhero comics. I'm just not sure. I can't pin down. I just know he's an older name that I haven't seen in a long time, and now he's back. And I don't know if he did this cover, which reminds me of some Frank Frazetta painting. I can't remember which one either, especially with the way that woman's hips and butt is done. But I loved the Brett Blevins art. I thought it was excellent. And let's see who's the colorist. Brett Blevins seems to be the colorist of it, and it was nicely colored. Blevins has it all going on. Kind of sad we haven't seen him around in a while, or maybe he's been on some comic and I just didn't know about it. But he's definitely, I don't know how old he is, because he could be younger than me and still have been an artist back then. But he still got it, or maybe has it even more than he used to. I don't know. So I hope to see him in other comics. I won't be continuing to get Stellar. It seems to be a story about some people who were weapons in some big intergalactic war, and they kind of broke reality and broke time, and that's a really cool idea. But the way it's written is just confusing and unsatisfying and kind of dull to read, despite all of that. I'm vaguely curious for more explanations of this, but not enough with so many comics out there and so much to read, to buy it at $4 a month. An interesting thing I noticed was at the bottom of the title page, or the credits page, it says created by Robert Kirkman and Marc Silvestri. So this is not created by the writer Joseph Keatinge and the artist Brett Blevins. And I wonder if Keatinge is bringing his A game, or whether his hands are kind of tied by having these multiple creators behind the scenes. I think their basic idea is a good one. I just was not grabbed by this. There's nothing particularly wrong by it. If I had a choice of only a few comics, then I'd probably be happy to read this. But in the crowded comic book market, it comes off as a weak one. So, maybe it'll make a lot more sense in the trade. Maybe it's just that you need the patience to get through the first issue, and you'll care more about them as it goes along. But I've got to judge things by first issues. I've seen sometimes where people will comment, first issues sell so much because of speculators and that kind of thing, and collectors. But really, I don't know about other people, but I think a lot of people do what I do, pick up the first issue and then decide a sort of 3-pronged choice. Do I keep reading it in single issues? Or does it feel more like something I just want to wait for in trade? Or do I just not want to read it at all? And there's so many new issues coming out, and it's kind of fun to look through the new issues. I think their higher first issue sales are driven by that. Why should I buy the first issue and then keep buying it unless I'm hooked? It doesn't have to do with speculating or trading. I'm sure there are some speculators who just go out and buy every first issue in hopes that one of them takes off. But I don't do that. And I think a lot of you guys out there don't do that either. And the reason I say that is just feel like people get a little too cynical about what is going on in the comic book market. There's plenty of us out there, I think, who are readers, but we read in a variety of different ways. And just because you put out a #1 comic book doesn't mean we're going to buy #2, or that we're going to buy #2 in single issues. So on the flip side, the reverse, I loved Weatherman, a new comic by the writer whose name is not familiar to me, Jody LeHiop. I don't know if Jody's a man or a woman. I'm kind of guessing a man from the way this is written, but I don't know. Nathan Fox and Dave Stewart. I actually picked it up most of all because of the name Dave Stewart on there. He was most familiar to me. I think I've read one other indie comic or a Vertigo comic with Nathan Fox, and his art's really great. The coloring is really great. It does not fit at all the cliche of what Dave Stewart does that we see so often in the Mignola-verse comics and even in Black Hammer, that have that kind of brown and dark kind of look. This is a whole different kind of color palette, and Dave Stewart makes it sing. Nathan Fox is a really good storyteller, and the story is really fun, and it really has a swing to it. So the writers got the groove that makes a comic book read really well. So I just poured through this. I didn't think I was going to want to read past issue. If I had to guess, I would have thought Stellar was the one I was going to be more likely to get hooked by, but I love this first issue of Weatherman. Now, by the end of the issue, the character's sort of regular life is kind of destroyed. So, and then we're going to move on to the plot. Where that plot takes us, I could still end up. Right now, I have a lot of confidence because everything, all the elements were so well in place here, but. This is not like Batman or something where there'll be one story and then another. It's one continuing story, and it may turn out still not to be the story that I want. So you may want to stay tuned if you're a trade buyer and see what I think about issue 2 and issue 3 before you rush out and order the trade. But this was a great package, well thought out. Really enjoyed it. So top notch. And, well, I'll just say, it seems that planet Earth has been destroyed, and there's plenty of human beings living on a terraformed Mars. And no one knows why planet Earth was destroyed, or maybe it was destroyed by terrorists. But the way they do that and the way they show life on this terraformed Mars and everything, it was just also spot on. Science fiction the way I like it. And, you know, as a longtime science fiction reader, the most satisfying science fiction to me right now is in comic books. There's probably too many science fiction comic books, but we each pick our own and what we like. Speaking of science fiction, I managed to read The Man of Steel. I really don't know what I think of it at this point. This issue had just amazing art by a favorite artist of mine that you don't see too often, Ryan Sook, and except for the one page, which continues the story of what happened to John and Lois. But that, again, just like, well, last time, the last 2 issues, it was 2 pages of what happened to John and Lois. Each of those 2-page spreads could have been reduced down to 1 panel, and this page, they just move incrementally, so incremental. Like, at the rate we're going, by issue 6, the last issue of this miniseries, we'll get what should have been the first page or 2 about what happened to John and Lois. But anyway, it's now we have a kind of mystery of what happened to Kandor. We got a lot of mysteries going on here. What happened to Kandor? What happened to Krypton? What's going on with the fires? The arson in Metropolis. In a way, I'd just enjoy a miniseries that's mostly about the fires in Metropolis. That's the one that's got me most interested at the moment. But very cool issue, a lot because of the artist, I felt, but also still enjoying Bendis's way of doing things, if just a little trepidatious about what feels like it might be an uber stretched out story, like that some of these mysteries may not be answered for 2 or 3 years, if I'm in my cynical view of the way Bendis might be doing things. Okay, the third #1 issue was Hawkman, And again, so all of these comics had outstanding art, and I particularly loved. I'm in love with Bryan Hitch again. I really loved the art in this Hawkman, and Bryan Hitch's artwork just seemed perfect for the story of the mystery and the reincarnations and the kind of cosmic meets everyday life as an archaeologist kind of story here. So I really enjoyed it visually, and I thought it was a pretty decent story. It's the first step into a mystery, and had a great action scene and some fun characterizations, but definitely the kind, feels like a long, protracted story. I feel like I read somewhere that Hawkman is a limited series, but hopefully it's at least 12 issues from the feel of the story at this point, or maybe it's an ongoing. It's not a one and done adventure. It's the complete opposite of that. And it's interesting when I think, because I've been reading some old Fantastic Four and looking at the splash pages back then, looking at this splash page doesn't tell us anything. It just shows Hawkman flying, and it gives us balloon, or not word balloons, but caption boxes giving us his thoughts or his diary, kind of. They're not even talking about the moment that's happening here. It's just sort of general, I am Hawkman, here's what's up with me kind of stuff. And that's fine, but with such a great artist as Hitch, I kind of wish we started in media res, like the old Marvel comics, and that something was going on in that opening splash page. Something is going on in the next few pages, so anyway, just a thought I had. Not to bring down this comic at all, which I enjoyed a lot. If I have any real caveat about this, I'm definitely sticking with this because I loved the art and I thought the writing was good. My only sort of hesitation is that so many DC comics right now are on an uber cosmic scale, and at the end of this comic, we learn that there's big cosmic stakes. The world's going to end, or the universe is going to end, or something. Can't it ever be I need to save someone's life, or I, need to rescue a stolen artifact? I don't know what, but something like that. But, so that's not to put down this story, just that there's too many stories like that. But this one seems like it's going to be a really well done one. I think I particularly got a bad taste in my mouth after No Justice, which I still haven't finished reading all 4 issues of No Justice, but that was just really kind of cosmic for cosmic sake and nothing else in my mind. But we'll see, because I haven't finished that. Maybe I should do a video on it, or maybe no one cares at this point. So anyway, yeah, too many. I guess that's the nature of comics, and now that stories are so drawn out, when you're doing drawn out stories, you can't do the small stories. You have to always do the big stories. It was exciting, or of course I was a kid then and I hadn't read so many comics, but it was exciting when a big story came up, because usually there were a few small stories or smallish stories, and then suddenly this big cosmic threat, or behind the small story turned out to be a big cosmic threat. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on those 4 comics. We'll see whether I get to make any more videos. My schedule's my life schedule right now is kind of crazy. I just can't predict. But I hope to be back and talk about some more comics, maybe ones I read from the previous week that I didn't get to make videos about. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.